So the next instructional strategy is cooperative learning. So this can be used to differentiate and scaffold information. You can combine a weak student with a strong student or put kids in small groups. It's probably best not to have groups bigger than 3, I have found, because once you get to 4 and beyond, there really isn't enough work for everybody to do. And to not always use projects as an opportunity to do cooperative learning. I have found that group projects you really don't get what you're wanting. I think it's often better to assign separate tasks, and then students can come together and bring their separate components together. And I also think it's important to teach students how to work in a group. So using what's called accountable talk and giving students stems in which to use while they are working with someone else, I think is very, very important. I would even suggest that teachers do projects that aren't necessarily even content driven, just so they can teach kids how to work in groups, because kids do not know, and a lot of adults don't know how to work in groups. And so I think it's very important that we teach them. So moving on to the next one is setting objectives and giving feedback. So this goes back to something I talked about earlier, where as a teacher, I'm writing the objective on the board. We're discussing it. We're going over it. We're talking about what the goal is for the day. And then I'm collecting data throughout the lesson. Either my students are using dry erase boards to give me feedback. Maybe it's thumbs up, thumbs down. Maybe I am having them do a Kahoot or the quizzes that I had mentioned, or a Socrative quiz to give me feedback. Maybe I'm going around and just having one-on-one conversations. And so that I'm giving the kids feedback, they are getting feedback themselves, and from that I can differentiate the information. So what I have done in my lesson, as I've talked about before, is I have some of my I can statements or my learning goals. And then again, I can use Google Forms. I can have conversations with my kids along with some of the other examples I talked about. So the next strategy is generating and testing hypotheses. So this is kind of really straightforward. It doesn't always have to be in a quote scientifical way. Even though I teach science, this is not something that I would use only when my students are doing an experiment. I think this is something that needs to be done constantly, pretty much almost every day, at least within every week. You need to have kids thinking. And I always tell my students that they do this all the time, especially in middle school. I say, girls, you probably think, well, if I wear this outfit, then this boy will notice me. Or if I do this action, then I think this other thing is going to happen. So having hypotheses is not something that we do rarely. It is something that we do all the time. So using prompts that require predictions, presenting a hook, and ask how the information will lead to other things or how it's connected before teaching is a way to do this. So I could ask my students what they think a word means. So for example, the word satellite, a lot of students don't know that the moon is a satellite of the Earth. So it's not something that's just man-made that we put into space to have our cell phones work. And then asking students how these terms are connected, maybe even before my kids look at the key terms, having them look at things and maybe they could see that, well, the sun, moon, and stars kind of go together, asteroids and comets kind of go together, and solar system and galaxies kind of go together. So kind of priming the brain for what they're going to be learning is the idea behind generating and testing hypotheses. Now, the last thing is questions, cues, and advanced organizers. So, with this, we will be seeing things like using stems, question stems, sentence stems, using wait time. I am very, very big on wait time in the classroom. I explain to my students that blurting out, that they shouldn't do that, not just because it's rude or they just shouldn't do that. I tell them that when they blurt out, they stop other kids from thinking, and that is not fair to those kids. And so I really try to ingrain that in my students, and it really, really does help. And using motions. I watched a video by Doug Fisher last year, and he talked about when we teach, we use a lot of cues, that we're pointing, we're making gestures, we ask a lot of questions. But then when students have questions, we usually go straight to direct instruction and then just giving the kids the instruction. And what we really should do is we should start with questions, starting with stems, help to prompt the kids to the information that they are looking for, then use cues, and then finally go into direct instruction. And using advanced organizers like flowcharts, mind maps, and KWL charts also help with this. So I have shown you the KWL chart that my kids are going to be using on the Padlet. So they're going to start by talking about what's something that you learn and what's something that you want to know. The K part is kind of going to be involved in the Google drawing, and when they show me what they know based on the word space.